Ahoy, and welcome to the sailing tutorial. This tutorial will show you how to sail realistic ships and boats in Second Life. I'll be using Speculaas Designs combat ships for the demonstrations, but the fundamental sailing concepts apply to other brands of Second Life sailing craft as well, not to mention real-life sailboats. We'll start with an overview of some terminology for important parts of the boat. This particular vessel here is a gunboat. Here is the hull, highlighted in green. The mast, the sail, the yard from which the sail is hung. Here's the rudder, and you can't see it in Second Life, but the sheet is here. Sheet is just another word for line or rope, and in this case it specifically refers to the rope you use to control the positioning of the sail. This is very important, and we'll talk about it later. Now we'll move on to some basic concepts of sailing. The boat moves forward from the force the wind exerts on the sail. It's obvious how this works when going downwind, but what you may not have known is that a boat can sail at an angle into the wind also. This is the result of several factors of aerodynamics, but in particular because the wind is pushing the sail sideways, but the boat takes the path of least resistance. Because of the long and thin shape of the hull, it is easier for the boat to wedge forward in the water rather than move sideways, even though the wind's force is going sideways. That covers how the ship moves forward, but it's also important to understand how it turns. It uses a rudder, which is a basic concept I'm sure you're familiar with, but it's easy to overlook the fact that the rudder needs to have water flowing around it in order for it to work. This means that the ship cannot turn unless it has some forward movement already. It also means that up to a certain point, you have more control over the turning of the ship the faster the ship is moving. Even though most sailing ships can travel at an angle into the wind, no sailing ship can go directly upwind. Here's an illustration of wind angles. You can see the arrow showing the direction the wind is blowing. You can imagine looking down at the ship in the center of the circle. The red-colored section illustrates the angles at which you cannot gain any wind power. These are called the irons angles. So, how do you get somewhere in that direction? You have to go in a zigzag pattern called tacking. You must make sure to turn your ship quickly through the irons angles, or else you risk slowing all the way down until you can't even turn effectively. This is known as getting caught in irons. We'll discuss how to extradite yourself from this position later on. The exact angle at which you can sail without being in irons depends on the type of ship you are sailing. Some ships can sail closer into the wind than others. Here are the names of the various angles, relative to the wind, at which you can sail. Close haul. This is where triangular rigged ships sail the fastest. Examples include racing sailboats, the gunboat, the corsair xebec, schooners, etc. Beam reach. This is where a lot of square-rigged ships tend to sail fastest, for instance, brigantines, galleons, and frigates. Broad reach. Running. Most ships sail slower as the wind gets right behind your back. Still, square-rigged ships have a major advantage over non-square-rigged ships at this angle. One type of rigging that does exceptionally well at all wind angles is the highly versatile ribbed junk sail, typical of Asian sailing vessels. For purposes of sailing in Second Life, it is very important to understand numerical wind angles and be able to visualize them, because often these numbers are all that you will see to tell you which way the wind is blowing. On the ships I build, the wind angle is displayed relative to your ship. 0 degrees means that you are facing into the wind and in irons. 180 means the wind is coming from behind you and you are running. 90 means you are on a reach. The plus or minus indicates which side the wind is coming from. The sheet is just the rope that controls your sail angle, so for most purposes the term sheet angle and sail angle are synonymous. There are exceptions, but we'll talk about those in a more advanced lesson. You need to adjust your sail to be at the correct angle in relation to the wind angle in order to use the wind for power. This may not make any sense to you right now, but the formula to remember is optimal sheet angle equals half of the wind angle, ignoring any plus or negative signs. If you have your sheet angle set perfectly based on that formula, you will accelerate as fast as your ship possibly can, given the wind speed. The further away from that optimal number it is, the slower you will go, and if it is far enough off, you won't accelerate at all. You will learn the commands to make this adjustment in the next section. Here's where we diverge from the real world and talk about some practical Second Life specifics necessary to pilot your Speculaas Designs ship. First, you want to sit down on the boat. You have to make sure you sit down directly on the hull or deck, because some parts of the ship are actually part of a different object which the ship reses. When you sit, a dialog box will come up asking if you want to accept an attachment. Make sure you accept this. Once in the piloting position, you can say in the chat bar, /1 raise to raise the mainsail and start moving. /1 lower will furl the sails and let you continue drifting with your previous momentum. /1 more will stop the ship completely. Use the arrow keys to steer the ship left and right. Remember, you have to pick up some speed before you can really turn. If you want to tack through the wind, you probably want to pick up around 3 meters per second of speed first, or you risk slowing down to a stop during the turn. /1 raise square will raise the square sails. This will give you more speed at wind angles greater than 70 degrees, but will actually slow you down and even make you travel backwards at wind angles less than 70 degrees. /1 lower square will furl the square sails. Of course, both of these square sail commands are only available on ships that actually have square sails. /1 drop will res a working lifeboat by the ship. This function is available on the larger SPD ships. To use the lifeboat, sit on the back bench and steer with the arrow keys. There are two ways to adjust the sheet angle. The most common way is to tap the up or down arrows on your keyboard. You have to wait a second for the change to show up on your information readout. Hold the arrow down to adjust the angle a lot, or tap quickly to adjust it a little. You can also say /1 sheet plus X or /1 sheet minus X, where of course the X is the number you want to add or subtract from the current sheet angle. So, what if you get caught in irons facing upwind with no speed to turn? There are two general ways to get out of this, although the best solution is to plan ahead while you're sailing and not get in that situation in the first place. You can force the ship around by saying /1 kedge L to turn left or /1 kedge R to turn right. This is supposed to simulate using anchors to pull the ship around in place. You'll probably have to say it multiple times because it only moves you slightly. It is meant to be slow, hard, and annoying. Each time will take 5 seconds, and be careful about spamming it too much because it will make you wait the 5 seconds for each command until you can do anything else. The other way to get out of the irons angles works only on square-sailed ships. You raise your normal sails and your square sails. This should cause you to start moving backwards slowly, and this gives you enough speed to turn slowly. One final sailing tip. Be careful in heavy crosswinds. If your ship heels over too far, it will capsize and sink. Now is a good time to mention some Second Life sailing quirks and technicalities you should be aware of. Don't hit the world edge. It can be difficult to turn back around, and you will be more likely to experience bugs. Cross sim borders as quickly as possible. Very important, do not moor by or hang around sim edges. Try to keep combat engagements away from sim edges when you can. Everyone must be seated for sim crossing, or else they will fall off the ship. When I say seated, I just mean in Second Life terms. The avatars may still have animations that look like they are standing up. Lag can often become an issue. Here are a few things to keep in mind about lag. The more ships and people there are in a sim, the more lag there will be. Using a heads-up display device, especially one which illustrates the wind angle, will approximately double the sim lag caused by your ship. People wearing ornate 500 prim armor or jewelry will cause more client-side lag to those around them. This concludes the basic sailing lesson for Second Life. If you'd like to try this out, check out one of the major pirate sims in Second Life, Victorian, Antiquity, or Jabberwock. If you'd like a demo copy of the gunboat to practice with, instant message Chase Speculaas in World.